Imagine surviving the darkest, most terrifying depths of two world wars, being forced to flee for your life across borders to escape a totalitarian regime, and then deciding your artistic legacy to the world will be painting shiny, happy people floating joyfully through the sky.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast.
It really is. I mean, how does a survivor of immense, unimaginable trauma become the world's greatest painter of joy? And more importantly, what can that choice teach us about keeping our heads above water today? Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled you are joining us.
We are. And our mission today is to unpack a deeply moving reflection by author John Novick Jr. It's a piece titled Chagall and the Blue Impulse of Childhood Memory, which is part of his larger America Actually series.
Right, and he sets up this beautiful, thought-provoking premise that I want to pose directly to you, the listener. How can a single piece of art, combined with a half-century-old memory, provide us with a survival guide for navigating today's relentlessly exhausting world? Okay, let's unpack this, because to answer that question, we have to start with a seemingly ordinary trip to a museum.
Exactly. We are going back to the early 1970s.
The 70s, yeah.
John Novick is just a little boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, visiting the Art Institute of Chicago with his grandfather, Jim Durkin.
And to truly understand the gravity of this memory, we have to look closely at who Jim Durkin was.
Oh, absolutely. This was a man who spent 4 decades working as a steel worker on the south side of Chicago.
Think about the sensory environment of a mid-century steel mill. You're talking about deafening blast furnaces, brutal heat, the constant clanging of heavy machinery.
Physical danger, the soot, all of it.
Right. It is a grueling, exhausting industrial existence that exacts a massive toll on a human body over 40 years. And then in his retirement, Jim Durkin takes a brief stint as a security guard at the Art Institute of Chicago.
Just picture that stark contrast.
It's wild. You have this tough, hardened veteran of industrial labor suddenly standing in the quiet, echoing marble halls of a fine arts museum, holding the tiny, soft hand of his preschool-aged grandson.
It is a profound visual, A man intimately familiar with the heaviest, most unforgiving materials on Earth, now tasked with guarding delicate, priceless expressions of human imagination.
Yeah.
And Novick emphasizes the exact nature of his memory from that day. He readily admits that the chronological events are hazy. Like, he cannot tell you the precise time of day they arrived, the particular route they walked through the galleries, or what they ate for lunch.
Right. The factual itinerary is lost.
Lost completely. But the feeling of holding his grandfather's hand, that feeling of absolute, unwavering security, is incredibly real to him, even 50 years later.
He writes that he felt like he owned the place. He and his grandfather walked into those imposing galleries, and he felt an absolute, expansive ownership of the museum and everything inside it. The art was strange, it was curious, it was larger than life.
And even today, when Novick wanders through that museum, it evokes that exact same expansive connection. It transcends time and space, reaching right back to a grandfather who has been gone for nearly 5 decades.
I was thinking about this, and it brought to mind an analogy about the actual mechanics of human memory. It is almost like factual recall. The what, the where, the precise time on the clock operates like a fading Polaroid picture.
Oh, I like that. The chemical colors wash out, the edges curl, the background details blur until you can barely make out the face.
Exactly. The Polaroid fades, but emotional recall, that is perfectly preserved in amber.
Preserved in amber, yeah.
The warmth of that massive calloused hand, the feeling of absolute safety, the awe of looking up at towering colors, that is trapped in amber, completely untouched by the passage of time. But there is a contradiction here that really strikes me. An environment like a massive fine arts gallery is usually deemed deeply intimidating, especially to a child.
Oh, for sure. It is cavernous, it demands silence.
Right, and it is actively patrolled by guards whose primary job is to tell you not to touch anything. How does a place that rigid get transformed into a kingdom of wonder for a 4-year-old simply through the physical touch of a loved one's hand?
Well, to answer that, we have to look at the neurology of how we process our environments. When you are a young child, your nervous system is essentially a mirror of your caregivers.
Okay.
If you are placed in a massive, echoing, intimidating hall, your biological instinct might be to shrink, to perceive the vastness as a threat. But when that child's hand is enveloped in the hand of a loving grandfather, a grandfather who himself projects a quiet, unshakable authority and a sense of belonging, that child's brain receives a powerful biological signal. It says, you are safe.
So the threat radar of the amygdala powers down.
Yes, and
Yeah.
the curiosity engine of the brain is allowed to turn on.
Hmm.
And this is why the emotional resonance outlasts the physical presence, or the factual memory. Emotion is the primary tool our brains use to encode what is truly important for our survival and our social belonging.
That makes total sense.
The brain is highly efficient, right? It discards the chronological itinerary because remembering the exact route to the coat check does not serve a long-term evolutionary purpose. But the feeling of expansive ownership, the feeling of being intimately tethered to a powerful protector while confronting the vastness of human creativity, that is vital data.
Vital data. I love that.
That memory sets the foundational theme for everything Novick wants to explore. It establishes that genuine anchoring connection provides the ultimate security needed to experience the world with wonder.
But that feeling of safety did not just happen in a vacuum. It was directly illuminated by the towering art surrounding them in those galleries. That feeling of expansive wonder that Novick experienced as a child is inextricably linked to the art he associates with those moments of peace, love, and joy.
Right.
And the artist who commands the absolute center of this memory is Marc Chagall.
Yes. Novick writes beautifully about Chagall's America Windows, which is a vibrant, breathtaking stained glass display at the Art Institute. It was a bicentennial gift to the city of Chicago from the Franco-Russian artist.
He also mentions the Four Seasons, right?
He does, yeah. The Four Seasons is a monumental mosaic at the Chase Tower Plaza on South Dearborn Street.
If you have never stood in front of a Marc Chagall piece, the best way to describe his subjects is that they are entirely untethered from reality. They are floating. They are spinning, shiny, happy people. You see lovers flying sideways over rooftops, musicians playing violins while drifting through the sky, farm animals soaring cheerfully through the clouds.
It is a world entirely devoid of gravity, cynicism, or despair.
Exactly. There is a distinct rhythm to the way his colors leap across the canvas or the glass. Novick even describes Chagall's hands in the poem we will read later as Vivaldian, comparing the artist's brushstrokes to the lively, orchestrated musical rhythms of a Baroque composer like Vivaldi.
Like orchestrated chaos that finds absolute harmony.
Yes. Looking at these works, Novick says, has always made him feel profoundly thrilled to be alive.
The visual impact is immediate. The colors he uses, these explosive violet blues, vibrant reds, bright yellows, they command a sense of unadulterated joy.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because you look at these vibrant, joyful, floating figures, and you feel that immediate sense of lightness. And then you look at the historical reality of the man who actually created them.
The biography of Marc Chagall stands in monumental contrast to the tone of his art.
It is staggering. Marc Chagall was born in the Russian Empire. He survived the unimaginable, landscape-altering horrors of 2 world wars. He was a Jewish artist who had to flee Nazi-occupied France in the 1940s to save his own life, leaving everything behind. He witnessed the darkest, most terrifying depths of human cruelty. His community was decimated. His life was entirely uprooted by authoritarian violence.
This is incredibly dark.
And yet his art is this explosion of luminous, blessed blue purity. He consciously chose to embrace the lightness of being inside him and project that joy into his art. I mean, looking at his history, isn't it almost an act of profound, calculated rebellion to paint floating, shiny people after enduring such deep, systemic trauma?
What's fascinating here is that you have identified the exact philosophical core of Chagall's work and why it resonates so deeply with a writer like Novick.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a rebellion.
Yeah.
It is crucial to understand that Chagall's joy was never born from naive ignorance. He was not a sheltered artist painting pleasantries because he did not know any better.
Right. He wasn't just turning a blind eye to the suffering or painting a saccharine fantasy to escape reality.
Exactly. He lived through the worst of human history. His joy was a deliberate, hard-won victory over despair. It is very easy for an untrained eye to look at his floating figures and dismiss them as purely whimsical or overly sentimental.
Sure.
But when you apply the context of his survival, those floating figures become a fierce assertion of the indestructible nature of the human spirit. In art, gravity often represents the heavy, crushing, authoritarian realities of the physical and political world.
Oh, wow.
By painting people who float, Chagall is depicting a soul that absolutely refuses to be crushed by the weight of the world's cruelty.
That completely reframes the experience of standing in front of that stained glass. We are not just looking at pretty colors filtering the afternoon sun. We are looking at an artist making an exact, intentional choice to weaponize joy against despair.
This historical context transforms Novik's admiration from mere aesthetic appreciation into a profound philosophical alignment. Novik isn't just saying, I enjoy the color blue. He is recognizing that the lightness in Chagall's work was forged in the fires of immense existential difficulty.
And that is why a grown man facing the relentless complexities of the modern world can stand in front of that window and find a functional roadmap for living.
Which is exactly where Novik takes the reader next, because Chagall's defiant choice of lightness serves as a blueprint for his ultimate message.
Right, like how do we, listening right now, take the colorful rebellion of those stained glass windows and apply it to our own daily struggles?
Well, Novik does not sugarcoat the present reality. He describes modern life as relentlessly complex, exhausting, fast, and often senseless. We are bombarded with information, demands, and anxieties from the moment we wake up.
It never stops.
No, it doesn't. I think everyone listening can intimately relate to that feeling of being perpetually overwhelmed by the sheer velocity of the world.
Oh, absolutely. The pace alone is enough to break you down, let alone the actual problems we are trying to solve. So what is his solution? He suggests that we need to look at the world in a way that is childlike rather than childish.
That semantic distinction is vital to his entire philosophy.
It is the defining line. Childish implies immaturity. It implies ignoring your responsibilities, demanding the world cater to you, or throwing a tantrum when things do not go your way. But childlike, that means letting go instead of holding on. It means honoring our individual lived experiences while celebrating an affirming community of people who are both like us and entirely different from us. Novik reminds us that while worry, struggle, and humility are waiting around every single corner, so are peace, love, and joy. You just have to be open to seeing them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the deliberate choice to access the wonder that is still dormant inside of our adult minds, despite the accumulation of our daily anxieties.
I hear that, and it is beautifully poetic to say we should slow down, let go, and be childlike. But I have to push back a little on the practicality of this advice for the average person.
That's fair.
When you are worried about paying your mortgage or navigating a sudden health crisis or just dealing with the sheer sensory overload of a Tuesday afternoon commute, how do we realistically execute that? I was trying to picture what this deliberate letting go actually feels like in practice, and I kept coming back to the analogy of trying to float on your back in a rushing, turbulent river.
That imagery captures the exact physical and mental friction of the modern human experience.
Because people always say, just relax and float, but think about the reality of being in a fast-moving river. The water is freezing cold, the kinetic energy of the current is violently pulling at you, and you know there are jagged rocks just underneath the surface.
Right, it's terrifying.
Your absolute first biological instinct is to thrash. It is to fight the current, to tense every single muscle in your body, and to try to claw your way to some illusion of control. It actually takes a tremendous amount of conscious effort, core strength, and deliberate mental focus to override that evolutionary panic.
Yes.
You have to actively choose to stop fighting, lean your head back, expose your vulnerable neck to the sky, and just let the water carry you. Floating is not a passive surrender. It is an incredibly active, strenuous choice.
And the psychological reason for that thrashing instinct is that our brains are hardwired to view vulnerability as a mortal threat. Novik is asking us to override our most basic evolutionary programming. Your analogy of the river perfectly illustrates why adopting a childlike mindset is not about ignoring the danger, the cold water, or the rushing current. It is about how you choose to conduct yourself within it. Finding your own beacon of peace, hope, and love, regardless of your personal faith or your cultural traditions, requires daily muscular practice. It is not a magical state of Zen that just descends upon you.
You have to choose to tilt your head back and look at the sky instead of obsessively staring at the dangerous rapids.
This raises an important question about how we govern our internal lives. Letting go is an active choice to access the spirit and lightness of being that already exists inside us all.
Yeah.
It is the Chagall rebellion applied to everyday life. It's acknowledging the war, the displacement, the turbulent river, the exhausting commute, and deciding that you're going to paint your internal sky violet blue anyway.
I love that. Paint your internal sky violet blue anyway.
Novik is telling us that the external world will always be fast and senseless. If we wait for the world to calm down before we allow ourselves to feel peace, we will be waiting until the absolute end of our lives. The peace has to be carved out actively, in the exact center of the chaos.
It is a radical acceptance of both the struggle and the joy. They exist on the exact same street corner at the exact same time.
Which brings us perfectly back to the memory of Jim Durkin. That memory is so integral to this entire philosophy because Jim Durkin embodied this exact balance.
Do it.
Here was a man who spent his entire adult life in the grueling, dangerous, exhausting, heavy environment of a steel mill. He carried the weight of industrial gravity on his shoulders for 40 years. Yet he was able to walk into a museum, hold his grandson's hand, and project a profound aura of total peace and safety.
Yeah.
He did not let the deafening roar of the blast furnaces extinguish his capacity for gentle connection. He actively protected that internal lightness so you could pass it on.
He absorbed the thrashing current of the river and became the anchor so his grandson could learn how to float.
Exactly. He modeled the very security that allows a mind to remain childlike and open to the strange, floating wonders of a Chagall painting.
So what does this all mean? We have journeyed from a hazy memory of a South Side steelworker walking through an echoing art museum, through the gravity-defying, war-surviving, brilliant rebellion of Marc Chagall, all the way to a practical, muscular philosophy for keeping our heads above water in a relentlessly chaotic world.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. And it leaves me with this one lingering thought that I really want you to take with you today. If a massive public stained glass window in the middle of a bustling city can serve as a private, intimate portal to a 50-year-old memory and a grandfather's touch, what everyday objects, buildings, or places in your own life are silently holding on to your most profound childhood joys?
That's a great question.
What ordinary landmarks are just waiting for you to walk past, slow down, and remember the exact moment you felt entirely safe, deeply loved, and thrilled to be alive?
That is a wonderful grounding question to carry forward into the week.